Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 5 Thursday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. For Week 5 this Thursday night, we got a game between the Bears and the Commanders. Probably not the most exciting game on paper, but I think this one actually could be kind of fun. Although you have two really bad teams going up against each other, you do have two bad defenses going up against each other as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this game winds up being, a little bit more higher scoring than it's kind of expected. I think the total in this game right now is I think it's like 40. It opened at 42.5 and it's already up to 44.5. So the public, I think they're kind of agreeing, they're expecting some points in this game, even though, these teams are kind of bad. But it's a primetime game. I'm going to be watching this game, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are. We're going to be playing the Showdown slate as well. DraftKings still putting up big contests, even though we're into Week 5. I mean, we still got a 500K to first GPP for this Thursday night game. So we're going to go through and talk through this Showdown slate, kind of go from top to bottom, hit on all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in. Now, as always, I do record these videos typically early on in the week. I'm making this video on Tuesday, and there are some injury news we're going to have to keep an eye on for this game. Jahan Dotson, I think he was limited in Monday's practice, or he was like he was estimated to be limited in Monday's practice. So that'll be something we have to keep an eye on. Same with Curtis Samuel as well. Other than that, though, it looks like the injury report's pretty clean. But yeah, we're gonna talk through the slate, guys. Before we do get started, though, as always, if you guys do enjoy these DFS videos, if they do help you out, make sure you hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button as well if you have not yet. And if you guys are new to the channel, if you have never checked out PrizePicks before, PrizePicks is the sponsor of this video. You guys can sign up for PrizePicks, and you can use my promo code NOAH. When you do sign up, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for PrizePicks with my promo code. And if you have never heard of PrizePicks, it's a very simple, easy site to use. It's a little bit different than DraftKings and FanDuel. On PrizePicks, it's a pick'em game, so you're playing against the projections. But as you can see, they have projections posted already for some props up for Thursday. They have stuff up for Sunday as well, and you're just picking more or less on a player's projection, whether you think a guy goes over or under that projection. You can see they have pass yards, rush yards, receiving yards, ton of different props you can take over on PrizePicks. So if you guys, again, are not signed up for PrizePicks yet, get signed up over there, use that promo code NOAH, and get your first deposit matched up to $100. But yeah, let's talk through this Thursday night game, guys. We're going to start off at the top of the player pool. We're going to hit on the quarterbacks first. So, kind of as expected, the most expensive player on this slate is Justin Fields. He's coming in at 11K, and then you have Sam Howell at 9,400. I think both quarterbacks in this game look pretty appealing. You look at the matchups for these two quarterbacks; they're pretty good. I mean, so far this season, the Bears have given up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. The Commanders I think they're just inside the top 10 in terms of fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Like I said earlier, kind of at the beginning of the video, I mean, these are two bad defenses, so I think it's a good spot for Justin Fields, and it's a good spot for Sam Howell. We'll start off with Justin Fields. Justin Fields, last week, we kind of saw him really unleashed. They let him throw the ball 35 times, had over 300 passing yards. Rushing-wise, he only had 25 rushing yards, but we know Fields is a dual-threat quarterback. He's someone that, even if he doesn't have the greatest passing game, he can still get there because of his legs. He can, run for 70, 80 yards. He can get you a rushing touchdown or two. He's, I think, the clear top option on this slate. He's going to project really well. I'm fine playing him in the flex. I'm fine playing him at captain. Honestly, I think if you are playing Fields at captain, I don't think you have to play a bunch of his receivers with him, because I could definitely see a scenario where Fields winds up being the high-scoring player on the slate, and none of his receivers do that well because he just does all the damage with his legs. So I think Fields is a really good play here, and if you want to stack him up with some of his receivers, you can, but I don't think it's a must to do that just because he can do it with his legs. And then Sam Howell at 9,400 also kind of offers a little bit of rushing upside, had 40 rushing yards last week. He's not as good of a runner as Justin Fields is, but we've seen Howell show some fantasy upside this season. He did have 21 DK points in Week 2 against Denver, 19 DK points last week against Philly, 17 against Arizona. He did really struggle in that game against Buffalo, but that was a game where pretty much everyone on the Commanders sucked because the Commanders only put up 3 points. They got blown out. Well, this is a game against the Bears, a bad team. You should expect the Commanders to be able to put up points here, to be able to keep this game competitive. And in a spot like this in a good matchup, I think Sam Howell at 9,400 looks pretty solid here. I like both quarterbacks quite a bit in this game. I think if I had to choose one, I maybe would lean with Fields, but man, I think both quarterbacks are definitely going to be staples in my lineups. I typically always play at least one of the two quarterbacks, and I think on this slate, both quarterbacks look very solid here. Now looking at some of these top tier wide receivers, you got Terry McLaurin coming in at 10,200, DJ Moore 10K. Terry McLaurin, been a staple in this receiving core for the last few years, just continues to get good volume every week. I think his upside is not as high with Sam Howell at quarterback as we have seen like in previous seasons. Like, just because I don't think Sam Howell's fully developed yet as a passer, we haven't seen him really lock in on McLaurin like other former quarterbacks have. But McLaurin still probably projects to see like 6 to 8 targets here. Last week, it's worth noting he did recover a fumble for a touchdown, so that's why his game log looks better than you would expect. 8 catches for 86 yards, but he did have that fumble recovery. But again, the volume's still been solid for McLaurin. I think in cash games, it makes a lot more sense to just play the quarterbacks. But for tournaments, we obviously know that McLaurin does have a big ceiling, so he's definitely someone you can play in tournaments. I think the same could be said for DJ Moore. Not going to project as well as the quarterbacks, but we know DJ Moore is a really talented receiver. We saw him finally break out last week, over 130 receiving yards, 8 catches, and a touchdown. Week 1, the Bears did not really use DJ Moore much. They did not target him much. Well, the last few weeks, we're starting to see DJ Moore kind of get that, wide receiver 1 type of role. 7 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. He's been playing like 90+% of snaps on a weekly basis. At 10K, he's a tough guy to go to like in a cash game setting, but for tournaments, again, I think DJ Moore firmly in play here. Both wide receivers I do like quite a bit. I just think, if we're talking about raw projection, I think the quarterbacks are definitely going to project the best in this game. Now, Brian Robinson's a tricky guy here. Like, it's a really good matchup against the Bears. The Bears have been a team you can easily run on. They've allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs this season. The only thing I worry about is that, Brian Robinson doesn't really get a ton of usage in the passing game. At most, he's probably going to get like 2 or 3 targets. He almost has to score a touchdown to put up a good game at this price tag, just because he's not going to get enough volume in the passing game to get you points there. Like, he's not going to get 6, 7 catches. That's just not the type of player he is. They'll use Antonio Gibson in that role. So I think in order for Brian Robinson to be a guy you have to have, again, you're going to need probably like 70, 80 rushing yards and at least a touchdown. Maybe he can get there without a touchdown, but I think that's pretty unlikely. I mean, you look at week 3, he had 70 rushing yards but no catches, 7 DK points. Like, all these weeks where he had good games, 13 DK points, 28 DK points, 13 DK points. He scored a touchdown in all these games. He had a receiving touchdown week 1. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in week 2, and then last week he had a rushing touchdown. So honestly, like, I know this sounds stupid, but I think Brian Robinson's kind of like a touchdown or bust play. Like, if he doesn't score a touchdown, I don't think he's going to pay off this price tag. But he is going to get all the goal line work. It is a good matchup. So obviously the potential to score touchdowns there. But I think he's probably someone I'd definitely be looking to fade in GPPs, especially if his ownership's going to be somewhat high. I don't think it'll be too high, but I definitely like the quarterbacks more. I think I like the wide receivers more as well over a guy like Brian Robinson. And then you have Khalil Herbert on the other side. Khalil Herbert's kind of been like in a little bit of a timeshare with Roscoe Johnson. I don't know a ton about Johnson. He's a rookie, but he has been playing a decent amount of snaps. I mean, last week you did see 16 snaps for Johnson, 23 the week before that, 22. I think most weeks you're going to see Khalil Herbert probably play like 60, 65% of the snaps, and then you'll probably see Johnson play 30 to 35%. So far this season, Herbert's not been great, but he did break out last week, had 103 rushing yards, 4 catches for 19 yards. Herbert, especially last season, whenever he would play without David Montgomery, like we saw Herbert be good in the games without David Montgomery. So far this season, he's not had like a true workhorse type role, but he is an efficient running back. He can be efficient with his touches. He does get some usage in the passing game. Between him or Brian Robinson, like I think I actually prefer Herbert if I had to choose between the two. I don't think the matchup's as good for Herbert as it is for Robinson, but Herbert's going to get some pass game usage. He's still going to get a good amount of carries, and I think if the game's competitive, he probably sees a little bit more playing time. Like I think the reasons he didn't play as much in these games were just because they were getting blown out. But like last week it was a competitive game, and you saw 22 touches for Khalil Herbert. So I think Herbert does have some upside at 8,600. He's firmly in play. And then we have some of these pass catchers. So you got Jahan Dotson at 7K, Cole Kmet at 6,400. Dotson, again, was a limited participant in Tuesday's practice. I assume he'll probably play here, even though it's a short week. Typically, if they're limited in practice, usually they wind up playing, even on a short week. So I'm expecting Dotson to play. He's obviously going to operate as the wide receiver 2 behind Terry McLaurin. He probably projects to see like 5 to 6 targets, maybe a few more. I think the matchup's pretty good. I mean, this Bears secondary is not one we should really fear. I think Dotson's fine at 7K. Not like I don't have a huge stand when it comes to him, but I think he's firmly in play. And then Cole Kmet, he's going to continue to operate as the clear tight end one for the Bears. And he's been pretty good as a pass catcher this season. The volume's been solid outside of that week 3 game against Kansas City where they got blown out. I mean, Kmet's seen 7, 6, and 9 targets. He's a big body, someone they can target a lot in the red zone. He did score 2 touchdowns last week. At his price tag, I think he's probably touchdown or bust, but at 6,400, I still think Cole Kmet does look solid here. I'm fine going there. And then we get to some of these value plays. There's actually a good amount of value that I like on this slate. So Curtis Samuel's coming in at 5,600. Curtis Samuel's mainly going to play out of the slot. In terms of playing time, he'll probably operate as the wide receiver 3. He's not going to play as many snaps, most likely as Dotson does or as McLaurin does, but he's still going to earn some targets. And they'll also give they typically will give him like 1 or 2 rush attempts, like maybe on like an end around or something. But at 5,600 for a guy that's going to play probably 65-70% of the snaps and probably project to see like 5 to 6 targets, I think Samuel and Dotson are going to project pretty similarly. And the fact that Samuel is $1,400 less, I think makes him probably project as a better play here. He might also get more ownership, but I definitely think at 5,600, Curtis Samuel looks like a pretty good value play on this slate. Logan Thomas, he's back to being the number 1 tight end for the Commanders. He did miss their week 3 game, but last week he wound up playing and played 79% of the snaps. In week 1, he played 82% of the snaps, and I'm pretty sure in week 2 that was a game that he got injured in. But last week, 79% of the snaps, I would assume he was running a good amount of routes as well. Only got 3 targets, but Logan Thomas is another pretty good receiving tight end. So far this season, the Bears, in terms of defending the tight end position, I think they've been just kind of like an okay matchup. They haven't been terrible defending tight ends, but they haven't been great either. I think Logan Thomas looks solid here. He's probably, again, probably another touchdown or bust play. I think in order for him to really put up for him to get double-digit DK points, he probably has to score a touchdown, but you could say the same for a guy like Cole Kmet, who's $1,200 more expensive. So as a value, I think Logan Thomas looks good. Curtis Samuel, though, I like a lot for value. And then you got a guy like Darnell Mooney, who's only 5K. He's been operating as the wide receiver 2 for the Bears. It hasn't really resulted in a ton of targets, because if you look at his games so far this season, he did get 7 targets in week 1, but he wasn't targeted in week 2. Only got 1 target week 3. Last week he did get 4 targets. But again, if you look at the snaps, he's been on the field for a good amount of snaps. Last week, played 54 snaps. He played 54 of the 72 snaps. The week before that, he played 71% of the snaps. Like, he's been on the field for 70+% of the snaps. He's a guy that does offer some big play upside. I know Justin Fields is not going to throw the ball deep a ton. At least he hasn't since he's been with the Bears. But Mooney does offer that big play upside. He probably projects to see like 4 to 5 targets. At 5K, I do like Mooney for value. I think Curtis Samuel's probably a little bit safer, but I think Mooney does offer a big ceiling, and at 5K, I do have some interest in him for value. And then you got Roschon Johnson at 4,800, who, like I said earlier, is going to operate as the RB2 behind Khalil Herbert. Johnson this season hasn't seen like a ton of volume, but he will get some usage in the passing game. In a game script where maybe the Bears are playing from behind, like that might result in more opportunity for Johnson, catching passes. He probably projects to see like 6 to 8 carries and like 2 to 4 targets. Nothing great, but at 4,800, he's fine. Not a guy that I have a ton of interest in, but I think he's at least playable. The kickers, they're fine value plays. I didn't really touch on the defenses. The Commanders' defense is 5,400. The Bears' defense is 4K. Both these defenses are in pretty good spots because these are 2 quarterbacks that we have seen will turn the ball over, will take sacks. If I had to pick a defense in this game, I think I would prefer the Bears' defense at 4K. Sam Howell this season has taken a lot of sacks, and he has thrown a lot of interceptions. Now, the Bears' defense has been terrible. They haven't really been able to get a ton of pressure on the quarterback, but they're a fine value. But I don't really love either defense in this game. I think the kickers, though, are okay to go to. And then lastly, we'll talk about a few more value plays before we wrap up this video. Again, there is a lot of value on the slate. You got Antonio Gibson at 3,200. He's going to operate as the RB2 behind Brian Robinson in scenarios where you do see maybe the Commanders playing from behind. I think that will really benefit Gibson. In their Week 3 game against Buffalo, where they were playing from behind for almost like the entire game, you did see a lot of snaps in that game for Antonio Gibson. He played 61% of the snaps Week 3. Most weeks, though, I think we can expect like 35 to 45% of the snaps for Gibson. He probably projects to see 4 to 6 carries and probably like 4 to 5 targets. They will use him a lot, though, in the passing game. He is only 3,200, and like I said, in a game script where maybe the Commanders are playing from behind, I think that does set up really well for Gibson. So if you want to build like that type of game, that type of lineup where maybe you think the Commanders are playing from behind, I think it makes sense to throw Gibson into those builds. At 3,200, I think he is in play on this slate. And then I do want to mention Equanimeous St. Brown. With Chase Claypool inactive last week, St. Brown did operate as the wide receiver 3. Now, he only got one target, but he did play on a good amount of snaps. He did play on 58% of the snaps. St. Brown has never been a great receiver when he was on Green Bay with the Bears. I mean, he's never been a guy that's earned a lot of targets, but he's going to be on the field for probably 40 to 50% of the snaps. He's going to run probably at least, I would say, like 15, 20 routes. So at $1,800, I don't mind going to St. Brown here as a punt option. Chase Claypool, like I said, wasn't active last week. I'm assuming he's going to be inactive again. I'm expecting the Bears are just trying to trade him. So it looks like Claypool probably won't play for the Bears again this season. By some chance, if Claypool is active, then yeah, I don't have any interest in St. Brown, but I do expect Claypool to be inactive again. So St. Brown's playable. Diami Brown at 2,800, probably not going to go there. I mean, he's going to be the wide receiver 4 for the Commanders. I think the only way I would consider Brown is in a scenario where either Dotson or Samuel miss. Like I said earlier, both Dotson and Samuel were limited in practice. If one of those two guys gets ruled out, then yeah, Diami Brown becomes a pretty good value. But I'm expecting Samuel and Dotson to both play, which makes Brown pretty much just a touchdown or bust dart throw. Same could be said for a guy like Robert Tonyan. He's been operating as the tight end 2 for the Bears. Hasn't really been able to earn a lot of targets, but he's been playing like 30% of the snaps. He's $600, touchdown or bust. GPP dart throw you could take a shot on. But I think that's pretty much it. I think that's pretty much all the guys that I think are playable. The cheapest guy that I think really looks good, assuming Chase Claypool's inactive again, I don't mind going to Equanimeous St. Brown at $1,800, but below that, I think it gets pretty thin. There's nothing really else down here that stands out to me at least. So I think that'll do it, guys, for this Showdown slate. We kind of talked about all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in. As always, if you guys do enjoy these DFS videos and if they help you out, make sure you hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. And again, go check out PrizePicks, guys. If you're not signed up for PrizePicks yet, get signed up over there. Use that promo code NOAH. You will get your first deposit matched up to $100 when you sign up for PrizePicks with my promo code. Check them out if you have not yet. But good luck this Thursday night, guys. Hopefully, we can all win some money on this slate. Hopefully, this will be a good Thursday night game. The primetime games lately have been pretty shit, but hopefully this will be a good one. But yeah, either way, guys, appreciate you watching. We'll see you in the next video.